One day, you will play the last game of your favorite video game ever. However, chances are you are a long way from that. And yet there are some games that even if they are running, are no barren with matchmaking wait times being much longer than they need be, or are victims to their own shadow, never living up to expectations. It's an end that all games will inevitably face for one reason or another. But today, we're discussing two particular games that have met the same end and led different lives. This is documenting the downfall of both Among Us and MultiVersus, two games that are no longer by our side. By the way, these are technically two of the series. You can find the previous video on my channel, among other interesting content. So, without much further ado, here are untimely deaths of two games that once led an era. First up, we have the COVID pandemic sensation, Among Us. Among Us, a game developed and published by Inner Sloth, is an online social deduction game that is available to get on all platforms for free, other than Nintendo Switch where you actually need to buy it. Its gameplay is simple. You play as these little beings known as crewmates, and you run around the map completing simple tasks with other crewmates to win the game, all while trying to figure out who is the imposter. A crewmate, whose task is murder and get the crewmates to vote each other in emergency meeting, where it's the only chance for the crewmates to discuss and vote out the real imposter and win the round. The concept in itself was not new. With party games such as Werewolf or Mafia already existing, Mafia in particular being made into a video game series, but Among Us was slightly different, perfectly incorporating balanced video game mechanics into the genre without ruining the game, such as teleporting method known as venting, and a way to sabotage the progress of the crewmates by closing doors, setting a task that required the crewmates to complete within a certain time, or else instantly lose the game. These mechanics definitely made it more fun to play as the imposter, and added more variety and risk to the crewmates having to navigate these dangers. Now, Among Us was released back in 2018, but with very minimal success, due to lacking many of the features available later. Just before the lockdown, its community reached a small 1,000 players. But by the lockdown having amazing timing, it went viral. Many streamers and YouTubers began playing it, doing collab with each other, as well as gamers generally playing it. The game was genuinely fun to play as it was a rare opportunity for people to not only show their gaming skills, but social skills too, with manipulation tactics being the only way for the imposter to win. And the experience was boosted to a higher level if you played with friends, whether in person or online. It was quite possibly the most popular game during 2020, outclassing other AAA games by reaching a peak player count of 3.8 players and remained strong for a good time, until eventually it faded out. But how did this happen? What's even more puzzling is that this happened just as the biggest update of yet was getting released. A brand new whole map, which was news as Among Us has had the same 3 maps until then, with practically little to no updates present as well. Perhaps it really was all a phase. Content creators were moving up onto new things. As the new lockdown subsided, so did the game. A while later, a new update dropped. But it was not here to save the game. Far from it. This new update was the final nail on the coffin. The free chat, which has arguably been one of the strongest suits of Among Us, was stripped, limiting you to a few certain keywords. Any psychological tactics, gamer abbreviations, or even any way to socialize with anyone after a game became impossible. All unless you went through a series of verifications including email, sometimes credit card, and a permanent username. The freedom that was key to Among Us was no more. Among Us in itself managed to define an age of YouTube and the internet, where people leaned towards it when the outside was inaccessible. But that is now over. And with it, Among Us has stayed in the past. So to this day, unless another pandemic breaks out, forcing us into lockdown, we aren't going to catch any side of Among Us anytime soon. MultiVersus is both an online and local player platform fighter, similar to the Smash Bros. Series, launching for its debut on July 19, 2022. Its main selling point was that it included popular characters from multiple franchises, including DC characters like Batman, Superman, and the Joker, along with other popular franchises such as Looney Tunes Time and other shows from Cartoon Network, with Shaggy from Scooby-Doo standing out as a fan favorite alongside Bugs Bunny due to meme of Ultra Instinct Shaggy being depicted as one of his moves. People were hyped for Multiverse for its release, as even though fighting platformer games weren't scarce and a big chunk of the character lineup, DC already had its own fighting game franchise such as Injustice. The mix between the two had never been done before, and a mix between multiple franchises hasn't been seen outside of Smash Bros., especially not with movie and TV show characters, instead of video game characters. It was also praised for giving some classic characters with no media such as the Iron Giant an opportunity to be in the public eye again. The game was set to be a hit, and even though it was free, it had everything every modern game had these days, such as a battle pass, skin, and of course, the GOAT LeBron James as a playable character. So on paper, this game should be alive and breathing well right now, which makes it all the more shocking when the servers were shut down in May of this year. Yes, unfortunately, if you're watching this video, then playing Multiverse is no longer possible. However, unlike Among Us, the downfall of this game had been a long time coming, and while justified, still a shame to see nonetheless. As I mentioned before, the strongest suit of Multiversus was that it was a platform fighter with popular characters, and to be honest, that's truly it. The battle pass, graphics, and other things I mentioned are standard things in this day and age. The gameplay itself was nothing to write home about. It's fun for a while trying out all different characters, maybe mastering your favorite character, but the balancing was pretty bad, and some mechanics were pretty janky and sometimes annoying. These were the main problems that the game itself had, but then there were other problems. One of them being the fact that since its release up until May 2024, practically a year and about most of its lifespan was literally an open beta, not the full game. The beta existing was not the problem, but unfortunately, the developers would use this as an excuse to slack off on updates, with new characters coming out once in a blue moon and practically zero quality of life changes. Any other updates were mostly game management, such as changing around some things in the menu for Christmas, Halloween, and such. And it didn't help that practically every seasonal update was locked behind a paywall, as they were literally all skins that had microtransactions involved. While it had a massive hype and a big player base starting off, the exact opposite from Among Us, by the way, you can see from the Steam stats that as the days went by, people slowly started leaving Multiverse with a steady decrease in players throughout the beta. Despite this, once again due to its nature of many beloved characters and playable, kinda fun gameplay, it built a core player base and fans that every game needs. Everything seemed to be going. Not particularly great, but good enough. That was until the beta was eventually shut down, to start its initial launch. This is when Multiversus turned from being an alright state to life support. Players were worried that their purchases would get erased, as Multiversus terms of service stated that since it was a beta, they had the right to, for one reason or another. I'm not going to get into the specifics, but in the end, Multiverse did let players keep their skins and purchases. But that wasn't the end of it, as their reputation took a massive hit since there was no real reason to actually shut the whole game to transition from beta. And the worst part of all of this was when the official version finally got released, the gameplay that used to be somewhat fun due to its fast pace became floaty and slower, making the game from slightly fun to just annoying to play. With the already bad balancing being even worse, so bad in fact that they straight up removed the Iron Giant for a while because of how broken it was. Inevitably, a couple months after its official launch, its official shutdown was announced, and the multiverse died. Not a slow and crippling death like Among Us, but like a cold shadow whose presence does nothing but linger in our memories. The death of a game is something inevitable, but Among Us and MultiVersus shows us that despite the beginnings or even the gameplay, if you neglect a game long enough and leave its fate to the player's hands, it is destined to fall. Faster than some and harder than most. Well guys, this is the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed it and found it interesting. If you did, why don't you like and subscribe? Check out my other videos and let me know if you want more videos like this in the future.